Operation Deny Flight. In the early 1990s, the Balkans were unraveling in a storm of ethnic violence, nationalism, and civil war. As Yugoslavia disintegrated, Bosnia and Herzegovina descended into chaos, with Serbian, Croatian, and Bosniak forces fighting for control. Cities were besieged, civilians targeted, and ancient communities torn apart by brutality. The skies above Bosnia were anything but safe. Military aircraft from various factions conducted bombing raids, strafed villages, and transported arms in violation of international resolutions. The world watched in horror, and NATO, still searching for its post-Cold War identity, made a bold move. In April 1993, it launched Operation Deny Flight, its first ever military operation. The objective was to enforce a no-fly zone over Bosnia and Herzegovina, as mandated by United Nations Security Council Resolution 816. NATO was to ensure that no unauthorized military aircraft could operate in Bosnian airspace. This mission marked a turning point in the alliance's history, its transition from a purely defensive Cold War shield to an active peace enforcer in a complex and violent conflict. To enforce the no-fly zone, NATO deployed fighter jets, AWACS surveillance planes, and aerial refueling aircraft from bases in Italy and aircraft carriers in the Adriatic Sea. Day and night, these aircraft patrolled the skies, identifying violators and warning or escorting them out of restricted zones. Initially, the operation was cautious, focused more on deterrence than confrontation. But that soon changed. In February 1994, NATO aircraft engaged in their first combat action when they shot down 4 Bosnian Serb jets that had violated the no-fly zone. It was the first time NATO forces had fired in combat in the alliance's history. The message was clear. The no-fly zone was not a suggestion. It was a commitment, backed by force. Beyond stopping air attacks, Deny Flight expanded its role to include close air support for UN peacekeepers and selective bombing of heavy weapons positions used against civilians. These actions were limited and politically sensitive, as NATO had to coordinate closely with the United Nations, whose troops were often caught in the crossfire. But as the siege of Sarajevo and other atrocities mounted, calls for more decisive intervention grew louder. The operation's scope and complexity increased as NATO took on a dual role, guardian of the airspace and reluctant enforcer on the ground. The balance was precarious. On the one hand, Deny Flight showed NATO's ability to enforce international law. On the other, it highlighted the limits of air power in resolving a ground-based humanitarian crisis. Pilots flew missions in hostile conditions, often over mountainous terrain, under threat from enemy surface-to-air missiles and anti-aircraft fire. Operation Deny Flight lasted more than 2 years, becoming one of NATO's longest and most politically sensitive operations up to that time. It ended in December 1995, following the signing of the Dayton Accords and the subsequent launch of a broader NATO ground operation known as IFOR. While the operation did not stop the war, it played a crucial role in limiting the conflict's escalation and laying the groundwork for greater NATO involvement in the peace process. It tested the alliance's unity, revealed gaps in coordination with international bodies, and forced member states to grapple with the moral complexity of humanitarian intervention. More importantly, it redefined NATO's purpose in a post-Cold War world. Operation Deny Flight proved that the alliance was not only willing to defend its members, but also capable of projecting force to protect human rights and international stability beyond its borders. It was NATO's first leap into the murky realm of crisis response, and from that moment on, the alliance would never be the same.